Hello and welcome to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiegue, today live on Wednesday, October 16th to talk some more NFL with you guys on today's episode. We're one day away from the start of Week 7, but before we get into all the previews and things like that tomorrow, there's a lot of things to go through on today's show, starting off with the Amari trade that I didn't get to yesterday. We're going to talk about that. Jerry Jones going off on some local radio hosts yesterday. When you thought you saw it all, of course, something like this pops up. And I'll give my thoughts on that and explain exactly what Jerry Jones said in that interview with the radio station. Plus, also, we're going to talk about the Steelers' quarterback decision that they have made, that they haven't made, that they could make. We're going to talk about Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, and that decision that is looming for the Steelers this upcoming week against the New York Jets, plus a couple more topics to get to on today's show. So don't go anywhere. We're going to go through all of that throughout today's show. But before we get started, I want to make you guys aware that if you guys have any questions during the show, we always are glad to hear about it. We want you guys to be involved with the show, and your input is always a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and insights, whether it's a quick question, a thoughtful comment, or opinion you just have to share. Please don't hesitate and share it with us here on these live shows. And now, if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message stands out, and not only stands out, but gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to go about that. To be part of the show, just use the new Super Chat feature available to you guys just by clicking the $ at the bottom of the chat box to send in your Super Chat. This way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and as exciting as possible. Get involved with the show. Drop me a question, comment, or anything like that using the new Super Chat feature. But now that we got that out of the way, we got to mention and bring up the most important piece of news from yesterday, depending on how you take it, is this trade by the Buffalo Bills, right? If we thought the Davante Adams trade was game-changing, was such a blockbuster move, for the Bills to also make a trade like this and basically go to the Jets and say, oh, you thought that was a nice move? Watch this. And then basically to beat them on Monday, and then the next day to also try to one-up them with their own wide receiver trade is next-level trolling. It's just next-level, just absolute boss move by the Bills. Not only did they beat them one night at home or on the road for the Bills, the next day they tried to one-up them, and it was just awesome to see for the Bills to try and, get that one leg up on them again, right? They can't let the Jets have anything. But on what they did, right? The Bills traded for Amari yesterday, right? A move that I was not expecting at all. A move that, we talked about these one-win teams, right? About how they could be looking to cash in on some of their assets or at least try to get something back, because this season was looking a little bit dire for them. At 1-5, what are your real chances to drastically get better over the course of the season? Some teams might be thinking, you know what, it's smarter, we're playing the long game, let's try and get rid of one of our star players, right? Not just hold them here. If they're not really going to make that much of a difference, let's try and get some more valuables later on down the line in the draft or anything like that, and try and cash in on some of these guys. And I didn't think Amari was going to end up with the Bills. Maybe somewhere like the Chiefs or something like that, or just some other team I'm not thinking of. But I definitely did not see Bills in this picture. But in this trade, the Bills obviously got Amari but they also got a 6th-round pick in 2025 for him, and they sent the Cleveland Browns only a 3rd-round pick this upcoming year and a 7th-round pick in 2026. And obviously the biggest benefit, right, goes without saying, the immediate replacement for Stephon Diggs for this offense that is certainly, I think, better than people would have thought initially at the beginning of the season. But it's had its moments against the Ravens and the Texans where it became pretty evident that they needed a guy to go out there and win some one-on-ones or get open a lot quicker, a lot smoother, rather than, maybe taking a little bit too long or not getting open at all. And, Josh Allen having to buy so much time that now he's getting pressure in his face and making ill-advised throws that he might not have made if he had a guy as prolific and efficient as Stefon Diggs or now Amari Cooper, obviously, at running routes and just getting open naturally, right? Just on their own skill set. If it's one-on-one, you'd take them 8, 9 out of the 10 times, right? Josh being, and the Bills needed a guy like this, regardless of how well they looked. It's always necessary to have a go-to guy like this. You see it on every team, every championship team for as long as we've been watching, really. You need a guy like this, so the fact that the Bills have someone like this now immediately in Amari Cooper, right? It's not to say that Keon Coleman or Khalil Shakir couldn't have maybe improved over the year and become this guy, but I think having an answer for it right now is huge for this team, right? Because not only that, they're able to be more dynamic when their run game potentially is not working as well or they deviate away from it a little bit. You're not so handicapped to it that you're not able to do anything else, right? Or anything else is really not that reliable. Now you have a reliable weapon in Amari Cooper, and while he is great to have on your team, it's going to make life a lot easier for the other guys as well. They're not going to, bring in as much attention to themselves, right? They're going to probably have to double Amari Cooper more often than not. And guys like, again, Khalil Shakir, who's a growing wide receiver. Keon Coleman obviously hasn't been too involved, but now he should see some more favorable looks. And it's a great addition, not just as a wide receiver, but for their entire offense, I believe. So that's the most obvious benefit, right? But what I really like about this move for the Bills and how they embrace this approach of being proactive rather than just being content with being comfortable with the team that they have. It's almost like the Houston Texans this offseason where, similar to the Bills right now, the Texans could have looked at this upcoming year, 2024, as a season where, you know what, like, we're good. We just made it to the divisional round. Our quarterback is the next big thing. We have great wide receivers in Nico and Tank. Our offensive line solid. Defensively, Christian Harris, Will Anderson, they're great. Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, they're all good players, right? We're good. We're good in 2024. We don't need anything else. But no, they were proactive about it. They said, forget all of that. Let's go out and get Joe Mixon if we can. Let's go out and get Stefon Diggs if he's unhappy in Buffalo. Let's go get Danielle Hunter to add to this great pass rush. And now you take a good team, a very good team, and you make it Super Bowl level kind of roster, contending level team that I think you don't see a lot of teams really make that jump to be uber aggressive like that. And I love that the Texans did that, and I love that the Bills are doing a similar sort of thing, right? They have a top 5 scoring offense right now over the first 6 weeks, but regardless of that, they saw a obvious, weakness in their offense so far, and they said, you know what, if Amari Cooper's there and the Browns aren't really going anywhere, let's go out and get that guy, and let's have no flaws, essentially, on our offense, right? We just beat the Jets. We're first in our division. We have a top 5 scoring offense, but let's still look to get better. That's what I really like about the Bills and their approach to trying and get Amari Cooper. And now, this offense, right, they're able to run the ball like they want to. They have Josh Allen, who is a top 2, top 3 quarterback, right? And now you add a guy like Amari Cooper to this offense already that's very good in the NFL so far. It's a great move by the Bills to really reassure that team. And also, some other things about this move. With the addition of Amari Cooper, the Bills also have released Marquez Valdes-Scantling as well. And, what you think of Amari Cooper based on just this year alone, he hasn't really shown off his talents per se, but with that being the case still, I think pairing him up, I think right now we already got an idea that Deshaun really isn't a great quarterback anymore. I don't know if some people are still holding off on that judgment, but I've pretty much made up my mind. So Amari, I don't think it's much an indictment on him, how the offense has looked, but more so on Deshaun. And I feel like with Amari now, the kind of performance that we got with him and Dak in Dallas, I think we're going to see a similar sort of version of him now with Josh Allen. And it'll be interesting to see how far maybe they deviate from the running game now that they have Amari Cooper, or maybe it makes his running game look even better if they line up the box a little bit more. The possibilities are endless, right, for this team. And I really like the fact that they made this move, obviously, and I can't wait to see them now play in their next matchup, which I forget who it is, but it's a great move by the Bills. They're really pushing right now that limit of being one of the teams to beat in the AFC. And funny enough, that's one of the topics we're going to get to later on in the show after a couple more segments. But closer now, after this break, in our next segment, we're going to talk about this rant that Jerry Jones went on yesterday on the local radio show for the Dallas Cowboys. He evidently showed his frustrations, not just with the question, but with the entire state of the team, I felt like, with his statement. So we're going to get into what he said. It got pretty heated. He got pretty heated. So we're going to get into what he said and just my thoughts on it and what I think it says about the Cowboys overall. So that is coming up right after this break. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up. Basement statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
We are back now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast to get into a very weird interaction, I should say, with Jerry Jones yesterday on the local flagship radio station for the Dallas Cowboys, right? Usually every week, Jerry Jones makes his weekly appearance on the team's radio station, and, they go through the usual questions, probably reflecting on the game, the good and the bad of everything, right? As you would if you appear on these weekly shows each and every week, right? But this time, it got really awkward, and it got really uncomfortable really fast, I thought, with not only the question, well, I shouldn't say the question, but just the response that Jerry Jones gave, because, the hosts, I should say, of the 105.3 FM show, Shane Sheriff, RJ Choppy, and Bobby Belt, apologies if I messed up any of those names, but those guys were the hosts of the show, as, they typically are, and they were asking Jerry Jones their usual questions, and after a blowout loss, like 47-9, right? It's you're probably not going to get the best mood out of Jerry Jones, right? But still, they asked him about the criticisms he's gotten for the inactivity that we saw in the offseason, right? And whether or not Jerry Jones felt that those criticisms that were made on this Cowboys team, on him himself, about not doing enough in the offseason, not reinforcing this team enough, were they correct? Were they accurate criticisms, now seeing how the team is 3-3? All their losses have come at home, and all those home losses have been pretty embarrassing. Did he feel that those criticisms were accurate, right? And, clearly Jerry Jones was annoyed by it, as most people would be, losing a game like that, and not to mention it was his birthday and everything like that, and he's always, it feels like everyone's always criticizing the Cowboys, right? So it doesn't really rectify what he says, right? Because what he said next, and I'll show you guys here, it got pretty tense, and uncomfortable, like I said, with the reactions from the host, right? So Jerry Jones responded with, "This is not your job. Your job isn't to let me go over all the reasons that I did something, and I'm sorry that I did it. That's not your job. I'll get somebody else to ask these questions. I'm not kidding. You're not going to figure out what the team is doing right or wrong. If you are, or any 5 or 10 like you need to come to this meeting I'm going to today with 32 teams here. You're geniuses." And he said a few more things that I didn't want to just, bombard you guys with the entire statement, but this was the main thing that he said. And obviously the main thing that made it pretty serious was the fact that he said, "I'll get somebody else to ask these questions," right? I'm not kidding. Pretty much threatening to fire these guys for asking what I thought was a pretty fair question. And right off of the bat, I'm sure most people have seen someone lose their cool like this. Like, when someone of higher power loses their cool like this, and it's very uncharacteristic, even for a guy like Jerry Jones, where we never really see him talk like this, which made it kind of weird and just unprecedented, right? Whenever a guy like a coach, an owner, a general manager, a president, or anybody of higher power loses their cool like this, it never really looks good. It's never really a good reaction that is very, validated with trying to respond this way. It never really looks good, if ever. So that's the first thing. And with him being annoyed, I get it. Receiving questions like this, you don't necessarily want to answer them, and usually we get the boring answers, but we don't really get these outlandish answers like we had with Jerry Jones. And quite honestly, I felt that it was pretty unprofessional, pretty weak, and obviously very defensive, right, of Jerry Jones to respond like this to radio hosts that are doing their job, right? He says it's not their job to ask these questions. Then I would like to know what he thinks their job description is, right? If the radio hosts aren't gonna ask him about the latest game, albeit a blowout, they got blown out, or they blew out another team, then what exactly are they supposed to ask, right? If we're not supposed to praise this team when they win and obviously criticize them when they lose, then what are they there for, right? That's one thing also. And also, just by responding this way, I think it says everything that the host kind of wanted to get out of this question, but obviously in a much more rash way, the way Jerry Jones put it, right? It's basically, to me, it's just screaming of the fact that Jerry Jones knows that he messed up. He knows that this team isn't very good, but almost like saying to this radio host, like how dare you question or try to criticize me with asking about the inactivity of the offseason? Like, who are you to ask me this, right? And again, I get it. It's a very annoying question, I guess you could say, because it's annoying from the fact that it's very true. You could think of it that way. And it is very true, right? This team has not been built up very well. This team has not rectified all the losses that they had in the offseason. Guys on defense, Dan Quinn obviously moving on, and not really rectifying the things on offense as well. Last year, the running game was okay, and then they lose their starting running back, so it got worse. Then on the defensive side of the ball, you lose guys like Dorrance Armstrong, or Deron Bland's not playing yet. The running game isn't very great overall. And Eric Fortis, welcome to the show. Which side of the trade do you like? I'm assuming you mean Amari Cooper and the Bills. That trade, right? So which side of it do I like? I love the Bills side of it. It makes them, get to that next level, I feel like, with a guy like Amari Cooper, and how his relationship is with Josh Allen, DK Metcalf, Algier, or Josh Jacobs. Oh, okay. DK Metcalf, Algier, or Josh Jacobs and JSN. I think I would prefer. That's tough. I think I would prefer DK Metcalf and Algier. I think I would prefer them. DK and the Seahawks pass a lot, and I think he he more often than not plays very good. So I like that side of it. But to stick with this Jerry Jones point, right? It's it doesn't make him look great because of the fact that, he says this isn't their job, and the fact that he threatens their job is not a great look on him overall. As a owner, as a person of higher up power, right? You have nothing really to lose. So to make a guy that's just trying to do his job feel like that with sarcastic comments and, threatening his job and threatening other people to come out and, ask different questions than what he's asking. Jerry Jones is better than that, or at least I like to think he's better than that. So that was pretty uncharacteristic-like, and I feel like he knows that this team isn't very good. Obviously, you can't look at this team on the field and think, we're right there. We're going to get it, right? Next week is going to be a little bit different. It's been 6 weeks, and I feel like he knows this team isn't bad, but it's just the idea of not accepting it, or just not accepting the fact that he is wrong, or that he built this team up very badly throughout the offseason by taking some bad decisions. I think really that's what the problem is with Jerry and what it says about the Cowboys, right? If he came out and said that, you know what, I built this team up wrong, I thought this and that, we should have done this, that, and the other, I think a lot of people would be like, you know what, good for Jerry Jones for admitting that, right? This could be a step in the right direction in trying to change something. Nobody would chastise him or criticize him for saying he's wrong. I feel like people would accept the fact that he's, self-criticizing himself and saying that, he didn't do his job as a general manager. And what's funny and kind of ironic about this is that if he wasn't the general manager and he was just the owner, I feel like he would have fired the general manager already for the kind of job that they've done building up this team. But obviously, he's the general manager and the owner. So I think it comes back to the fact that Jerry also wants things to, he can't have it both ways, right? Obviously, when they're playing great, and this Cowboys team, like, it has performed very well in the regular season the last couple of years. When they're great, when they're looking great on the field, Dak's an MVP candidate, their defense is high flying and getting turnovers and whatnot. He has no problem receiving all the praise and everything like that. He embraces all of that and all that good that comes with it, obviously, right? But when it goes bad and you don't build this team up very well, you can't just try and ignore all the criticism and feel like it's a personal attack, or feel, offended when people are criticizing your job, which was to build a competitive team as the general manager and try to make the most accurate, appropriate decisions to make this team better, obviously going forward in the playoffs. But when the praise is there, people will probably give it to Jerry Jones. But when the criticism comes, he doesn't want to accept that his way of doing things or his decisions were wrong. And you just can't have it both ways, obviously, right? With that sentiment and getting things like that, I didn't like the fact that he got personal, obviously, again. And he mentioned somewhere in this statement that he said, you're not going to figure out what the team is doing right or wrong. If you are, or any 5 or 10 like you need to come to this meeting I'm going to today with 32 other teams here. You're geniuses. And to that point, right, I don't think it takes geniuses to realize what's wrong with this Dallas Cowboys team, right? I think a lot of people, like I've mentioned on here, or just other people in media have mentioned that it hasn't looked good for this reason, this other reason, right? They can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. They have no other weapons other than CeeDee Lamb. And it just appears that they're soft also. So it doesn't take too many brilliant football minds to really realize that. So for him to say that doesn't really resonate too much either. So that's another thing. And lastly, we talked about Nick Sirianni yesterday and how uncomfortable it was when you have a guy like that, receiving criticism from his own fans who are within their right to criticize Nick Sirianni or say what they want at the games, right? Albeit, respectful, right? We're not going to say anything too outlandish, but, like, you suck chance, or you shouldn't have this job chance, or something like that. It's not great to hear, but it's not like too out of bounds, right? And for Nick Sirianni to go out there and kind of chirp back to him, to his own fans after a win, we talked about that and how like come on, like Nick Sirianni, the leader, the representative of the Eagles team, for him to show and react like that to his own fans, it shows a lot about the organization and why some of these little distractions and behind the scenes issues are popping up with him, with Jalen Hurts. Also, I think it's a little bit comparable to this situation with Jerry and how any sort of criticism he gets from this radio host, it says a lot about how things and how maybe he operates things behind the scenes, right? The self-criticism maybe isn't there. He's not so in tune with the fact that he's unable to see his shortcomings and realize that, hey, you know what? I'll come out and admit it. I didn't build up this team right. Let's try maybe to get somebody else in here to help me out. He likes things to have it be done his own way, and a lot of times I feel like being so driven to want to prove and show everyone that you're right, that you're not going to budge from your methods, leads to your team looking like this. And when you put out the same exact product and feel confident like he did all offseason, right, and leading up into this season, you got to be ready to receive the criticism when it's not there, right? For as confident and proud that you were of this team heading into this year, don't like whimper about it now. Don't start to kick and scratch and fight everybody that has criticism about it right now, justifiably so. And lastly, I'll mention this also, right, with the fact that, at the beginning of the offseason, he said that they're going all in, and the fact that they put out the exact same product, if not worse, it's not everybody else's fault that they're criticizing you now for Jerry Jones not being able to live up to his own statement, that he made pretty confidently, right? He said that they're going all in this year. He said that this year was going to be the year for, some sort of breakthrough in the playoffs, right? And now that it's looking like you're not even going to get back to the playoffs, right? Don't be. And he doesn't like the fact that people are criticizing him on it or calling him out. That's the problem, I think, more so than just football with Jerry Jones. And you look at the Bills, you look at even the Jets, right? People might be clowning them a little bit, more so the Jets than the Bills. But you want to talk about going all in, look at those two teams, right? It might not work in the end, but at least they're doing something about it, right? They're not throwing out there the same old team. And again, Jerry Jones shouldn't get upset when he made those claims about going all in, and now when it's not working, to feel offended or feel like attacked for the criticism he's receiving from radio hosts on how it hasn't really worked out the way that he thought. It's just a failed project that he called out at the beginning of the offseason, right, by saying that they're going all in, and for it not to work now, it's justifiable now that these criticisms are coming in. So yeah, the fact that he reacted like that, I wasn't going to talk about it, but then I looked at it, and it's like to react like that and threaten the guy's job seems going too far, obviously. So I had to bring it up now and address it also as well, because it was pretty outlandish for even Jerry Jones to say something like that. So we'll leave that topic there, and we'll see if anything else comes of it. But moving on now to some more quarterback talk. We're going to talk about Russell Wilson and him potentially getting his first start this upcoming weekend against the New York Jets as well, with him being fully healthy. Is he going to get the job over Justin Fields now? We're going to discuss it. We're going to talk about what Mike Tomlin said this week, and is this the right decision or not? That'll be coming up right after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Thank you guys for joining me back here on the show, and we got to mention now the quarterback situation with the Pittsburgh Steelers. One that I sort of felt was pretty settled after a 4-2 start for the Steelers, and obviously Justin Fields playing. I think it's fair to say that he has been playing better than what a lot of people thought he would play like, and also playing better than what we saw out of him in Chicago. But the decision now became a lot more serious because Mike Tomlin spoke yesterday, as he usually does weekly, to address the media with the quarterback question looming large because Russell Wilson was now finally fully healthy, right? Based on the reports and the fact that he was active last week to be the backup quarterback, the calf injury that he was dealing with seems to have been fully healed now, and whereas before, Mike Tomlin, where he answered all the questions about Russ and what happens when he comes back, he sort of answered it in a way like saying, it's not present or it's not an issue that we have to face right now, so I'm not going to talk about it because it's hypothetical. So, fairness to Mike Tomlin, that makes sense. But now, the fact that he is healthy, it's not hypothetical anymore, right? So, we got to get some answers, right, out of Mike Tomlin. So, before this week, it was clear that Justin Fields was the guy because of that, but now that he is healthy, Russell Wilson, he is still technically the starter, right? That was the plan at the beginning of this entire thing, right? They brought in Russell Wilson first, and I'm pretty sure, I'm almost 100% sure that Mike Tomlin said that he was going to be a starter, and that Justin was going to get an opportunity, right, to kind of show them what he was made of throughout the entire offseason, but that Russ was the starter. That was the original plan, technically, for this entire thing. And now that Russ is healthy, Mike Tomlin provided more of an answer this week because he said that Russell Wilson is in consideration this week. We'll see what that leads or where that leads us after the practice week. So he'll be getting first-team reps accordingly this week for the first time since he's been there, obviously. So that's a move in the right direction where we've seen already some reports, some people come out and say that it's looking like Russell Wilson is lining up himself for his first start, where technically, Mike Tomlin hasn't said that Russ is going to be the starter, but already people are starting to jump the gun a little bit, right? Because he is getting first team reps, and it is his job technically, right? Because that's what Mike Tomlin said a few months ago back when this entire thing started, that Russ was the starting quarterback, right? And Justin was going to come in. They were going to try and develop him and everything like that. That was the original plan that had to take a detour, right? Because Russ got hurt in the lead up to training camp, and he hasn't been 100% healthy this entire time. So Justin had to play, right? And to be fair to Justin and to Mike Tomlin for making this decision, right? Justin hasn't looked like 1,000% like he is the starting quarterback, right? He's had some great moments, right? He's had great games as well, I would say, but he hasn't been 100% convincing, right, up until this point, and he had to be. He had to be very deliberative, very almost perfect for Mike Tomlin to change his plans originally and say, you know what, Justin has, impressed all of us out of the water, and we're going to go with Justin instead of Russ, right, based on the circumstances that we were facing. And it hasn't really been like that, and it's not too easy to change Mike Tomlin's mind anyway, so the fact that Justin wasn't perfect as well left the door pretty much open for this thing to happen. And I think Mike Tomlin put it pretty well yesterday when he said Justin Fields has been good, but not to be confused with great. And I thought that was another great Tomlinism that he kind of dropped on everybody. Justin's been good, but don't confuse it with great. And you need to be great in the NFL, right, to be in contention for the ultimate prize, right, to even just be in contention, let alone win it. So to that standpoint, to that point, it does seem fair that, they have Russell Wilson there. The original plan was to go with him, and they can't obviously control that he got hurt. So the fact that, he is still sitting there, and the fact that he is healthy now, and Justin hasn't really 100% fully convinced you that he should have the job, why not at least give it a try? And originally, I was going to come on here and say that I hated this move. They shouldn't mess with the flow that this team has going for right now. But still, I am aware of the fact that Justin hasn't, been like averaging like 225 yards, 2 touchdowns each game, and has thrown only 1 interception. It's been all right. It's been pretty good. It's been better than I thought it was going to be, honestly. But still, there has been moments against the like the Broncos or the Raiders this past week where some of the throws weren't really on target, or the offense was stalling, or maybe Justin was feeling a bit apprehensive about throwing some throws over the middle of the field or into some certain coverages where he felt maybe that it wasn't worth the risk, and this offense stalled out a lot of the times, and it wasn't looking that much different than last year. It's certainly better, but there are some moments where you're thinking, like, one moment we're seeing a great play or a great throw, and other moments we're seeing just a bunch of like junior varsity level kind of football plays, as Mike Tomlin would put it. So I get it from that standpoint, right? It does make sense, and they wouldn't have brought Russell Wilson in if they were just going to stick with Justin Fields eventually this year. To some people, they might not have even touched or gone to Justin Fields this year if Russ had been healthy. Some people might have believed that, and I probably was one of those people, to be quite honest with you. I wasn't too sure when Justin Fields was going to play, knowing obviously what I knew at the time and not predicting that Russ was going to get hurt. Then that he did get hurt and Justin came in and surprised a lot of people with how he played, then it gets a little bit trickier. But they brought him in to see what he can bring to this team, and obviously they're big fans of him. They're happy and content with what they've seen from him in the practice field. So, we know how much Mike Tomlin hates hypotheticals and how much he hates living in the what if moments, right? So it also makes sense from that standpoint that they would at least try Russell Wilson, right? Because they are trying to be great, because they might unlock a whole different level to this offense, right? If Russell Wilson comes in, why not at least give him a try, not just have him sit there and never know the answer to that question, right? I feel like Mike Tomlin has shown us now that he needs to have those absolutes, right? And it's not wrong, but a lot of people feel like Justin has done enough to just continue to be the starting quarterback. But it looks like there could be that opportunity this week for Russell Wilson to start, and also you've got to get rid of the hypotheticals, like I said, but it could be Russell Wilson. I've heard that they could have a potential package where maybe they have some place for Justin and Russell Wilson. But when we start deviating into that sort of realm, like bringing in Justin for a couple plays here or there, having Russ in for some of these plays here, if we're really trying to be great, meaning like the Steelers, right? If they're really trying to be great and they're really trying to establish themselves as one of those teams, name me one other team that kind of half-weighs it with their quarterbacks, right? It's not a thing, and it can't be a thing, right? You need to pick one, and you can't have a sort of special sort of package with Justin Fields. Like come on, like they're not gonna have an offense like that. No offense is gonna come in just mid-season and just incorporate a package like that and think that it's gonna work perfectly. They need to pick a quarterback. So that's really my biggest issue now. If you're gonna go with Russ, at least be 10 toes down behind that decision. But my concerns with going with Russ are the lack of running ability, and with Justin Fields actually back there to kind of mask those issues, right? And Russ not really having that running ability anymore. It's not the fact that Russ is going back in there, it's not going to make the offensive line block any better. It's also not going to make the receivers get open any quicker. So if that's still the case and you have an immobile quarterback back there, we're not going to see Russ escape too many pressures and run for 10 to 12 yards, maybe even more, and turn that awful looking play into positive yardage, right? He's not going to be able to do that. So that's one thing. One of their offensive tackles, Dan Moore, said it today that Justin's running ability makes this team or helps the offensive line tremendously, right? Because of that running game, because of his threat, and the fact that the offensive linemen, know that they have a guy back there that, not to say that they're going to block any worse, right, with a running quarterback, but having that ability, you can see why it's a benefit to the offensive line, knowing that they could, maybe not feel so pressure to be so perfect with their blocking, knowing that the quarterback back there can move more than 5 yards either way, and that's something that Russ doesn't really bring. The offensive line, like I said, overall hasn't been awesome, so with Russ being so immobile, those things don't really match up, and he hasn't really played yet, or he hasn't played at all yet, obviously. So getting in rhythm, getting over those hiccups, can the Steelers really afford to withstand those in a game on Sunday Night Football where you're 4-2 with a Jets team that's low in morale, to bring in a new quarterback now and expect them to kind of light a fire under this offense? I don't know. I feel like it's a tall task to ask for Russell Wilson, despite all of his experience and things like that. He might have a better arm, and he might be more accurate or more decisive with some of these throws, but I feel like the Steelers offense doesn't provide you with a lot of time back there, and oftentimes you have a lot of pressure in your face. So those are really my concerns. And to leave you guys with this, what happens if Russ does play very well? Are you just going to keep him the starter and everything that Justin sort of did is just out the window now? Not that it has to be fair, right? We're talking about football and winning. Nothing's really going to be fair. It's just all about winning. But Justin, how many starters would go 4-2 with a brand new team and then be benched, right? It never really happens. So what if Russell, plays very well, or what if he comes in and plays very bad, and then you have to go to Justin and all this sort of thing, and it kind of gets ugly in this game, and that's some of the last things you want to happen. So that's why kind of half-weighing it with these guys I really don't like. It kind of goes back to the one game against Denver where they rotated offensive linemen in and half-weighed that decision. Like we're at a point now, you just make the decision, right? Whether you go with Justin or Russ, make the decision and then go off of that. I would lean towards Justin Fields at this point because I think he has earned that, but we'll see. Mike Tomlin's not going to give anything away until Sunday, but that's where things stand as of this moment with the Steelers and their quarterbacks up until now. And speaking about quarterbacks, one quarterback that's extremely happy is Josh Allen because of that trade that we mentioned with Amari Cooper. Are the Bills now the team to beat in the AFC, or are they at least a top 3 team in the AFC now, guaranteed with this move? We're going to talk about that, how they align themselves with the Chiefs, with the Texans, with the Ravens in the AFC conference, and how good and how well they match up with those other teams. So that is coming up in just a few seconds. We'll be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Jumping back into the action now on the Chip Shot Football Podcast, here to talk about more of the coverage on this Amari Cooper trade and talking big picture now with the Buffalo Bills, because I feel like now the AFC has been pretty difficult to sort of determine truly and really convincingly that this team or this other team is truly standing out to this point, right? I feel like everything is looking very close. There's a lot of 4-2, 3-2 teams that one team could be coming off of a bad loss, but the next week they could be beating a team that we're feeling very good on, right? And now that we're 6 weeks in, some of those teams are still, or I would say the majority of those teams are pretty much still in that group. But I feel like now, after a couple weeks of some more consistent performances, we're able to kind of pick out, I would say, 4 teams right now in my at least. And it's not like the NFC anymore where there's like 8 or 9 teams, I feel like, that are all competing for all these spots, right? I feel like the NFC is a lot more wide open, and there's not a true, great team in the NFC, right? All those teams kind of have their deficiencies, but in the AFC, I think 4 teams have sort of stood out convincingly right now, and those teams are the Chiefs, the Houston Texans, and the Baltimore Ravens. And now, after this Amari Cooper trade, I would say that the Bills are not quite the team to beat in the AFC, but they're right in that group with those 3 other teams that I mentioned, right? And I believe they're now included in that group, but it also works out that we got a team from the AFC West, we got one from the AFC South, from the AFC North, and the AFC East, how it all has worked out like that. It looks like these 4 teams could potentially win their divisions based on how everything is looking right now, right? The Chiefs are probably going to win theirs. The Texans are probably going to win theirs. I'd be surprised if the Bills don't win theirs, and the Ravens, the Steelers are also 3-2, but they haven't been so convincing yet. So that's where they stand. These 4 teams could probably win their divisions and are going to be vying for those top 4 seeds in the playoffs, right? But it's kind of funny how it works out like that, right? But so far, looking at all these teams and what makes them great, and kind of deciding whether or not the Bills are in par with these 3 other teams, right? We're going to sort of break it down here, right? Looking at each team and what they're made of and what kind of makes them so great, obviously, so far through the year. And looking at the Kansas City Chiefs so far through this year, they are the only undefeated team left of these top 4 teams. They are dealing with a lot of injuries, but when you have, the old get-out-of-jail-free card with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and you got a guy like Travis Kelce who is starting to kind of pick it up a little bit here, they just always find ways to win, and that's what makes it so easy to kind of hate them, right? You think that you have them, you think that with these injuries they're going to drop off significantly, but much like the Patriots in the last dynasty that we had, Patrick, Andy, and Travis also included in this trifecta, they find ways to win. They're able to change up their schemes, go to a different option or make guys around them look a lot better than maybe a lot of people will think that they are. And, just win games and know what to do, how to execute in some of those moments to win some of these big games, right? And their defense also, led by Steve Spagnuolo, has been very, very good, very, very good in those big moments as well. When they need a stop, where they need to get off the field and give the ball back to Patrick, more often than not, they come through with Chris Jones and guys like that on that defensive side of the ball. And they got that championship dynasty level of pedigree that you just have to consider them a top team because they've earned the benefit of the doubt so far, whether it's Hollywood Brown out, Isaiah Pacheco out, Rashee Rice out. It feels like they should be much worse, but they always find a way to stick it out through these games. And with that being the case, and being in so many of those big moments, right, they know what to do, how to execute, and what plays to go to and what not. So that's the kind of experience and level of just calmness and confidence that they have in some of these big games that have them undefeated so far. So they have to be included in this conversation. But also, you look at the other teams as well, the Houston Texans, the talent is off the charts with this team, right? The roster can match up with pretty much anybody in the conference, in the NFL. They have a quarterback to rival any of the other quarterbacks, pretty much, other than Patrick, I guess you could say. A defense that's compatible, or that's capable, of getting to the quarterback, getting turnovers with Danielle Hunter, with with Will Anderson and guys like that. They're able to get there. Christian Harris is still hurt. He hasn't even played yet. So when he comes back, they're going to be even better. They're able to get turnovers because of that pressure that they generate. And they have a great mix of very young and very experienced guys that I think pairs up so perfectly, where Stefon Diggs is coming in, and he's still a great player, right? Abilities-wise and everything on the board, right? But still, maybe he's not as athletic or feeling as physically fit as he once was at the age that Nico and Tank Dell are, and they bring that to the table, but also they're able to pair that level of what Nico and Tank bring to the pedigree, the successful level of experience that Stefon Diggs has, and likewise with Joe Mixon being in some of those big games and being in successful teams that have made it to Super Bowls or that have made it to conference championship games, right? I think they have a great mix of that. And CJ also is very young. He's only in his second year, but he also brings a maturity that you don't really see with young teams like this. So talent-wise, they have everything. The coaching as well has been phenomenal from DeMeco Ryans as well. So they have to be included. They're only 4-1, and they lost to the Minnesota Vikings. But other than that, they're looking very much like one of the top teams. And then looking at the Baltimore Ravens, another team that has a MVP caliber level quarterback in Lamar, the best duo in all of football with Lamar and Derrick Henry also coming over, and they have a clear identity on what they are, what their capabilities are, and how they're gonna stick to it no matter who they're facing. They're gonna run it down your throat, and a lot of times, a lot of teams just can't stop it. So they have a clear idea of what they want to do behind Lamar, behind Derrick Henry, and they have a good supporting cast around them. You know, Zay Flowers just had a massive game. Mark Andrews seems to kind of be getting back into the flow of things as well. So that's great to see from them. Their defense is also, you know, they might have lost some big names like Clowney, Geno Stone, and Patrick Queen, but it still looks capable of getting some of the big stops as well, with still guys like Kyle Hamilton, obviously Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey as well, Marcus Williams too. All those guys are great players, and the defense is still considered great. And while they might have given up a lot of points to the Bengals or the Cowboys there towards the end of the game, or even the Ravens or the Raiders to an extent, I would still consider them a very good defense. And they got that experience in the playoffs last year, where they were the number 1 seed, where they got everybody's best shot, and they unfortunately fell short. But getting to that conference championship, I think, is going to serve them well. And they're looking more and more like a mature team that knows who they are, that knows how to get back to that conference. We get to the Buffalo Bills now, right? And much like these other teams, right, they have a quarterback that is potentially a top 2, top 3 guy in the NFL, a defense that may be the weakest out of all these defenses, but isn't necessarily considered a bad defense, right? Like they're god-awful. They're still very formidable in some moments that can pressure the quarterback once Von Miller comes back, or with Gregory Rousseau or Ed Oliver and guys like that. So their defense meets the requirement, I will say, right? They can run the ball efficiently, just as efficient as anybody in the NFL. And, you know, they've been in this playoff fight for a while. You know, Josh Allen has been getting, you know, more and more familiar with that level, with that stage, and competing with Patrick all those times and being so close but just falling short. And now they add a guy like Amari Cooper to this formula that they have going with Joe Brady as their offensive coordinator, knowing what they want to do with the running game, and now adding Amari to kind of complement that is it's why I consider them right there among these top teams in the AFC, where we're starting to see it separate a little bit with these 4 teams. And the seeding battle is going to be fascinating with all these teams, because they're all basically going to play against each other at some point this year, right? The Texans are going to play the Ravens at some point this year, I think around Christmas or something like that. The Ravens have already played the Bills and the Chiefs, right? The Bills have already played the Texans and the Ravens, obviously. I'm not quite sure if the Texans play the Chiefs this year, but that pretty much means they're all going to like face each other pretty much. So how those battles go out and how they perform the rest of the year, it's going to be interesting to see who the number 1 seed is going to be for this year's playoffs, because for each of these teams, it's going to benefit them very specifically. So I'm really looking forward to that. But for right now, I think Buffalo has solidified themselves to be in this very limited group in the AFC so far. They're not the team to beat yet, but if they get that number 1 seed and they get progressively better over this year, because we don't know how Amari Cooper's going to look, right, yet. So once we see that and kind of see the potential that this team has with Cooper and Josh Allen, then we could maybe start inching towards naming them the team to beat. But for right now, they're pretty equal with the Texans, the Ravens, and the Chiefs so far. So let me know what you guys think of that and the trade overall, because it was a massive move yesterday. But we do have one more topic to get to on the Jacksonville Jaguars, another AFC team, but very much the opposite spectrum of what we were just talking about, right? They're 1-5, and have they reached the point of no return, or is now the now or never moment for them to kind of turn their season around? Some of their players and Doug Peterson also touch on this topic that we're going to get to and we're going to explain as well once we return after this break. Don't go anywhere. Thank you guys for joining me here on the last segment of today's show before we officially start Week 7 tomorrow and get to all those previews. I had to bring up this topic that I saw on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and so far the Jaguars sort of stopped that sort of free fall that they were in before this week before this week, where they beat the Indianapolis Colts, and that was a good moment to have, right, to get their first win, but it didn't really last too long, because after that they went over to London and they lost recently, just this past week, to the Chicago Bears 35-16 over there in London. And while Chicago does deserve some credit for playing better on offense and getting what it seems like a little bit more out of Caleb Williams now and having a better understanding of what to do with him in this offense, it could also have a lot to do with, and after that loss, their safety, Andre Cisco, had some pretty harsh reality sort of words to say about this team and what he saw on the field in London, which isn't something great to hear if you are a Jacksonville Jaguars fan. Actually, give me one second, guys. I do have it here. I just forgot to add it, so just give me 1 second. We'll have it here for you guys. Here we go. We have it here. This is what Andre Cisco had to say. I just forgot to add it. He said, "How should I say this? A lot of quit. As the last line of defense in a situation like that, you could feel when we're playing as one and when we're not. I feel that very early in the game, maybe after halftime, it felt like we weren't playing like one." And he also went on to say that it was extremely concerning to see the team play like it did on Sunday, and that it's kind of dangerous knowing that some guys aren't giving 100% because it makes everybody else pretty vulnerable in terms of health, in terms of safety. If everyone's not doing their job to the best of their abilities, it could jeopardize somebody else. And then we're talking about safety reasons, right? And that's obviously no good for anybody, right, on that case. And what really stood out was obviously that he said that he saw a lot of quit in this team, and that's why this question pops up, right? Because I feel like we're on the brink right now of whether or not, like the question says, is it now or never for this Jaguars team in 2024? Because we've gone through the first 6 weeks and it's gone as bad as it possibly could have. The only way it could be worse is if they haven't won a game yet and they were 0-6. But still, it doesn't make it any better that they're 1-5 and that they barely won that game against the Indianapolis Colts, right? To sit here where they are and have Andre Cisco say that some guys just look like they quit already and have given up on the game. And I think that speaks volumes about what this season could be for the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? It feels like I said, we're on the brink of either this team is going to get it together and start to piece things bit by bit and just, be kind of like a 500 team, or that they're going to get their butts kicked again. And next week when the games are all done, right, during the week, we could maybe start seeing some drastic changes, right? If we see some of the same attitude and performances and just very disappointing display from the Jaguars after a year where, they collapsed pretty drastically. And the thought is that you're going to do everything possible to avoid that and just be the furthest you can be from having any sort of relation to that team in 2023, right? But it's been more of the same this year, right? The performances haven't been there. Their defense isn't playing very good. And not only did Andre Cisco say that that he saw a lot of quit in this team, what Doug Peterson also said kind of stood out to me as well when he said that we've got to change. I say we, it's all of us, coaches, players, everybody. We've got to change right now that culture. Otherwise, it just gets out of control. We're on a slippery slope or right on the cusp of that slope. At some point, we've got to say enough is enough, and you've got to have enough pride and figure out a way. And two things stood out to me there, where he said, we've got to change right now that culture. And when you talk about a word like that, that's sort of like the foundation of everything, right? And I think talking about changing the culture, a move to that sort of level of being that drastic to change an entire culture, that could mean maybe changing the head coach. And that's why I kind of rated Doug Peterson as being the potential next coach to be fired, because this team is 1-5, and for himself, I'm sure he didn't mean fire himself, but I'm sure he meant that talking about changing the culture, that's pretty drastic to do for a 1-5 team and kind of get him to believe wholeheartedly in a whole other different idea. And for him to mention that right now, it must be getting pretty bad, to where it's not like we're going to change one thing here with the offense or another thing here with the defense, right? We're talking about the entire culture, not just the team, but the organization and everything like that. Talking about changing all of that in this bubble that we call culture. I think that speaks about the bigger problems that this team has, the macro problems that just can't be fixed throughout the course of a season. If that's the case, then some major changes could be heading towards this Jaguars team. And also, where he mentioned that, what did he say? He also mentioned that they're right on the brink, on that slippery slope, like he said, and that at some point you have to say enough is enough, or you have to just have enough pride and figure out a way. It feels like we're right at that moment. Why I feel like we're right at that moment is because they're going to play in London again, and they're going to be playing the Patriots to win in any of their games this year, and they just got off of a game where they got their butts kicked at home by the Houston Texans. So why this is now or never, why I feel like there's a now or never moment, why Doug Peterson is also kind of hinting at that, is because now I feel like playing the Patriots, you, not to throw shade on the Patriots, but you can't have a better game to try and win that you're expected to win, to try and turn this thing around, right? If you can't even beat the Patriots with a rookie quarterback, that Drake May looked pretty good, and I don't feel like it's going to be a cakewalk by any means for this Jaguars team, but still, for them to win this game, they have to win this game, because if not, like I said the following week, we could be seeing some very drastic changes if they fall to a rookie quarterback again, a Patriots team that is also 1-5, and they couldn't beat the Tyler Huntley-led Miami Dolphins, or that they beat the Bengals, but ever since then, they've just gotten their butts kicked in most of these games. If you can't even beat that team with a rookie quarterback, then some big decisions need to be made, and that's why, again, I feel like Doug Peterson is going to be one of those guys to feel the pain, the wrath of some of these changes, and things have gone as bad as they could have for the Jaguars, also because you're not going to move your quarterback, right? You just made him one of the highest paid in the NFL, and you're just trying to bounce back from 2023, and it hasn't gone that way. Also, and to kind of give context to the situation a little bit here while we wrap up, they, like I said, they couldn't beat the, at that time, Tua was their quarterback, so they lost to Tua and the Miami Dolphins. That was one of their losses. The Patriots, who they have coming up this week, lost to the Tua-less Dolphins, so they have to win that game. This Jaguars team has also given the Browns their only win this year, and we always talk about the Browns and how they can't score 20 points. The Jaguars only scored 13 points in that game, so, for how bad we talk about the Browns beat the Jaguars. That was their only win, so that's not a good look also. They got their butts kicked against the Bills. They just got their butts kicked again against the Bears with another rookie quarterback. I know he was the number 1 overall pick, but still, they have shown some of their weaknesses. So to get beat up like you did this past Sunday is pretty resounding. Like I said, also, they're a big fan of it all this year. I feel like they have some glaring holes, and you can see it in the stats as well here, where their defense is allowing the second most yards total and per game in the NFL. They've allowed 2,340 total yards this year, is only second to the New Orleans Saints with 2,375. They've allowed 390 yards per game, which again is only second to the New Orleans Saints, who are at 395 per game. Their passing defense is the worst in the NFL, allowing the second most points per game, also 29 points per game, only second to the Carolina Panthers at 33. And I guess based on those stats, it's no surprise why the Panthers and the Jaguars team also have the same record, right? And they shouldn't, because of having Trevor, because of having a Super Bowl winning quarterback like Doug Peterson, and bringing in a bunch of other talented guys, right? It shouldn't be what it has been so far with the Jaguars. So with all of that being the case, this week is the now or never moment, right? If you win, you're extending your life, right? You gain another additional life, but you are very much on your last life, right? If we're talking about that sort of sense, right? You're on your last life if you're a cat, right? You've already used up your 9 lives. You're on your last one right now. You can gain one back, gain some extra time if you win, but if you don't, that's it. At least in my estimation, right? I feel like if you lose to this Patriots team, something needs to happen, and already the season's not looking great. They're not going to make the playoffs, right? But there has to be some sort of ramification for losing to the Patriots and being 1-6, because carrying on from last year, it's very unacceptable what we're seeing from the Jaguars. So their division isn't also, otherworldly, right? It's not like the NFC North or anything like that. The Colts are 3-3. The Titans are 2-4, I believe, or something like that. It's not like they're dealing with an uphill battle that much. So for them to be last, pretty drastically last, is unacceptable. So now is the moment for this Jaguars team that they need to take advantage of, or some consequences should be coming down from their owner. So that is pretty much it on the Jaguars and today's show. I want to thank you guys for joining me on today's episode of the Chip Shot Football Podcast. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as checking out the network on all forms of social media and following them as well, and tuning into both YouTube channels to catch more of the Chip Shot Football Podcast in a variety of different ways as well. And lastly, remember to tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more of these live shows to get involved with, covering the NFL all the storylines, debating, discussing everything around this league with me, Manny Maradiegue, as your host. Thank you again for joining me, and I'll see you guys back here tomorrow to get underway with Week 7 in the NFL.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit.